In this video, we will look at science fiction feature films which were released from 1927 to 2017. We chose this genre and medium because we love exploring the new worlds which these films bring to life, and we want to share a few of our favorites with you. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines sci-fi as fiction dealing principally with the impact of actual or imagined science on society or individuals, or having a scientific factor as an essential orienting component. Sci-fi focuses on making the imaginary seem possible. It takes the craziest things we can imagine and makes them reality. Things like time travel, aliens, superheroes, and the dead walking are just a few things that are possible in the science fiction genre. The third era of the film industry was from 1927 to 1938. The movie we chose was the 1931 version of Frankenstein. This movie was adapted from Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. The story follows a scientist named Henry Frankenstein who succeeds in resurrecting the dead. He is able to assemble body parts from several different dead people. He eventually is successful in bringing these parts to life. However, he encounters issues when he finds out the brain he used belonged to a criminal. As a result, his creation turns out to be a monster. There were an additional 7 Frankenstein sequels, 2 of which were released not long after. These 2 were The Bride of Frankenstein and The Son of Frankenstein. Frankenstein went on to appear in a large number of productions. This film was remade as The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957 and The Horror of Frankenstein in 1970. These films all helped to keep Frankenstein a household name through the years. Even if people have never read the book or seen the movies, most people are still aware of who Frankenstein is.
Like none other.
The fourth era of film was from 1939 to 1947. For this era, we will look at the 1941 version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is a story about the good and bad that lives within each person. Dr. Jekyll drinks a potion that turns him into Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde is an evil man who begins to kill people that are important to Dr. Jekyll. This film was nominated for 3 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Cinematography Black and White, Best Film Editing, and Best Music Scoring of a Dramatic Picture. It was also a remake of the 1931 film by the same name, which had also been nominated for 3 Oscars and won 1. While not as popular as some of the other films we will look at, it still remains relevant today. There have been films made within the last decade which are based on the same novel that this film was based on. In the 1990s, the story was transformed into a Broadway musical. The musical was then turned into a made-for-TV film. Era 5 was from 1948 to 1965. For this era, we chose King Kong vs. Godzilla. This is a film of mixture from the King Kong and Godzilla worlds. It's a battle of power as it focuses on these 2 beasts fighting against each other. Despite the fact that the movie is from Japan, it made a huge influence throughout the world. Both King Kong and Godzilla remain popular Hollywood creatures even today. Both King Kong and Godzilla have somewhat died down in popularity, but movies with these characters are still being made. Japan released the most recent Godzilla movie this year. The 6th era was from 1966 to 1976. The film we chose for this era is Planet of the Apes. This film follows 2 men who land on a planet that is ruled by apes. Instead of men ruling the world, the apes are the superior beings. These men must learn how life is lived as the submissive creatures. Planet of the Apes was released around the same time as 2001: A Space Odyssey, and was not expected to do as well as this film. However, it ended up doing far better. It went from a small single-theater release to a huge hit. The reboot film series was released in 2011 with the premiere of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. War for the Planet of the Apes is the most recent film of the series. It was released July 14, 2017, and grossed over $140 million. Era 7 was from 1977 to 1994. Star Wars Episode 4 is the movie we chose for this era. It was released in 1977, which is at the very beginning of this era. The film famously takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It follows the life of Luke Skywalker. After the death of his aunt and uncle who raised him, he journeys to find his place in life. The film follows him as he joins the rebellion against the Empire and all of the adventures that ensue. This movie was revolutionary. It introduced new technology and was ahead of its time in many movie-making aspects. It led to 2 sequels which were released during this era. All 3 films dominated at the box office. Star Wars continues to be a dominating series. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 were released in 1999, 2002, and 2005, respectively. Episode 7 was released in 2015. Episodes 8 and 9 will be released in 2017 and 2019. Star Wars Episode 7 is the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time. Star Wars turns the notion that sequels are never as successful on its head. There are a large number of spin-off TV shows, video games, and movies that have come out of the Star Wars galaxy. One of the most famous is Star Wars Rogue One, which fills in some of the backstory of the original series. The 8th and final era began in 1995 and is still continuing today. For this era, we chose Interstellar. This movie takes place in the future. The Earth is devastated and becoming uninhabitable. Joseph Cooper sets out on a space exploration to find a new planet for the people of Earth to move to. An issue he faces is that time on Earth is moving far more rapidly than the time he is experiencing in his space travels. A major theme in the movie is time travel. Cooper uses black holes as a means to travel to the past or the future. This movie has a lot of scientific information about space and time. This can be related to the theory of relativity discovered by Einstein. While not everything in this movie is scientifically accurate, it does make for an interesting film. This film is complex and some people may need to watch it several times before fully grasping it completely. Since its release in 2014, other space exploration films which follow a similar storyline have followed, such as The Martian in 2015 and Passengers in 2017. Creativity is a huge factor in how successful a film is. However, marketing and publicity are also just as influential. People tend to love the same things that everyone else is loving. It is a form of peer pressure. So if you can convince the majority of people to see your movie and then love it, it will most likely be successful. Marketing draws people in, and people coming to watch the movie produces revenue and therefore helps the film succeed. Star Wars is a great example of these 2 concepts. When Episode 4 was released, it was groundbreaking. People went to see it because it was new, different, and creative. People continue to flock to the theaters today to see the latest one because Disney has now plastered Star Wars stuff everywhere. In the last 40 years, billions of dollars has been spent on the marketing side of the Star Wars franchise. This is just one of the ways it has stayed as successful as it has over the years. These films all bring creativity to the table that causes them to be unique and interesting. Each of these films successfully made the imaginary believable and thus drew people in and got them talking. The overarching theme in all of these movies and the whole genre is to make the unbelievable possible. Each of these movies makes it seem as though the imaginary is reality. Bringing people back from the dead, transforming into other beings, and space travel are all normal in these films. They are all also examples of films which have withstood the test of time. Most of them have had fairly recent remakes, or characters from these films have appeared in other films recently, thus keeping them alive today. I think the genre will continue to flourish. It has produced the most successful film franchise of all time in Star Wars. The genre is usually also extremely successful at the box office. 6 of the last 10 highest grossing movies this year were sci-fi movies. I do not expect to see this changing anytime soon. Moving forward, I want to use the lessons taught by these films in my career. This genre pushes people to think outside of the box. I want to learn to use my creativity like the creators of these films did. Most of them took risks. They told daring, far-fetched stories, but became successful. I want to learn to trust my work and my creativity enough to take risks and think big.
Luke, I am your father.
I just snorted. Okay.